What is going on, everyone? In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to break down some fundamental lighting basics to take away the scare factor of it and get you lighting better. So when we talk about light, there are two main types. There's natural light and artificial light. Basically, natural light is the sun and everything it affects. Essentially, if you have window light, that's natural light. If you're in the shadows under a tree, still natural light. If you're in broad daylight, you get the picture. And artificial light is anything that is not lit by the sun. So a lamp, an LED, a flash, a strobe, any light bulb ever is a form of artificial light. Now, a lot of people can be afraid of artificial light because they don't really know how to use it and how it affects their subject. Well, no more. We're gonna demystify all that and make it really easy, break it down really simple. Basically, when we talk about light, there are 5 main things that affect it. Right off the bat, there's the brightness of the light. That is pretty straightforward, how bright the light is. You get the idea. After that, you got to take into account the size of the light. Essentially, the bigger the light, the softer the light source will be. Just because a light is bigger doesn't mean it will be brighter, but it will produce a softer quality of light. If you have a large light panel, it's going to be softer than if you have one super bright LED, but they might produce the same output of light. Similarly, if you have a smaller light, it will be harder. That's why when you're out in midday sun, you get a lot of those harsh shadows, because although the sun is massive, relatively speaking, it's smaller than the size of my thumb when you look at it. So it is a very, very small light source. It's just incredibly bright and produces very harsh shadows because of that. So if you would want softer light, you would want to go with a bigger light or put something in front of the light to essentially increase the size of that light source. Next up on the list is how far away the light is from your subject. If you have a light really close, it's going to be a lot brighter, and it's also going to be a lot softer because relative to the subject, as we talk about with the size of the light, it's going to be bigger. As you move the light farther away, it will get harder in its quality of light, and it will also get dimmer. Significantly dimmer. There is something known as the inverse square law, which pretty much says that the farther away your light is at an exponential rate, it will get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. So if you want a bright, soft light source, bring it close to the subject. If you want a light that is less bright and harder, bring it farther away. The fourth thing that impacts your light is what you have in front of it that can affect the softness or hardness of it. This is why you see a lot of people lighting their videos with a big softbox on like an Aperture 120D or something like that, because it increases the size of the light and it has diffusion material inside of it that evens the spread of that light and therefore makes it softer. Now, conversely, if you want to make your light harder, you can put different things on the light, barn doors, snoots, etc., that will focus the light and make it harder, giving you more of a point light source. And the fifth and final thing that overall impacts the quality of your light is where you have the light facing. Now, when you start out with experimenting with lighting, you might be tempted to just point all the lights at your subject. And a lot of us fall victim to this because it just doesn't turn out well. Now, pointing the light to your subject will make it brighter, but maybe that isn't always what you want. If you feather the light away, kind of like what I'm doing in this video here, it'll create more of a soft cast on your subject and make it more flattering and soft because you're just catching the edge of the light. You're not catching the main hard part of it. This is the same as if you were to bounce a light off a wall, off a ceiling, off an umbrella, etc. You may not always want to point it directly at your subject. This can also be where you would have, say, a backlight pointed directly at your subject and then reflect that light back to the front of them so that way you fill in those shadows. It's ways that you can kind of play with the angle of your light to give an overall feel and vibe. This is why if you see a lot of horror movies, they'll light from below because it gives this kind of surreal look and makes things just feel off and unsettling. But if you were going for a happy kind of lifestyle vibe, you definitely would not want to do that because it's gonna create this unsettled feeling and then it's just not gonna seem right and feel like something's off the entire time. Same with how comedy shows, sitcoms are lit very bright because it's a very bright and happy and laugh-filled format. Whereas dramatic films, they're a little darker, there's more contrast there. And these are all ways that you can move lights, shape lights to create mood, to create drama, to create feeling in your videos, in your films, in your photos, etc. So to recap, we went over natural and artificial light, knowing that natural light is the sun. That's pretty much all it is. Whatever comes from the sun through windows, etc. Artificial light is anything else, whether it be light bulbs, LEDs, flashes, etc. Now with natural light, you can still modify it. You can reflect it. You can soften it. You can put a diffuser in front of it to soften that light, lessening those harsh shadows and making for a more pleasing image. And that is still using natural light. You're not adding any light to it, you're just modifying the light that's already there. This is why those 5-in-1 reflectors you see are so handy, because you're able to modify the light so well. We also went over the 5 main things that affect light. We talked about how bright it is, the size of it, how that affects softness and hardness, the distance from your light to your subject, how that affects softness, hardness, and the amount of output of light that you're going to be able to get, talking about the inverse square law. Then we also talked about how you modify your light, and finally where your light is pointed, if you're bouncing it or if you're pointing it directly at your subject, if you're feathering it or if you're not. All these things come together to really shape your photos, your videos, your films, everything. If you've been scared of getting into lighting, here is your first step. Take this knowledge and start experimenting with lights, even if you're just modifying the sun to see what that will do in your portraits. Take this as groundwork and start experimenting, see what you like, see what works for you, what doesn't, and overall, this will just help take the quality of your photos and your videos to the next level, and then you can start racking up those likes on Instagram. So, with that all said, thank you so much for watching. Show some love to that like button. Comment down below if you like this kind of thing, if you want to see more lighting videos from me in the future. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell to be notified when I post new videos, and I will see you on the next one. So to recap,